I wanted to make this kind of jump right in on it. You know, we've talked in I think some previous conversations about, in some ways it's crazy to make predictions about where this technology is going to be in 10 years. But in some way, and I think, Robert, you hit it so well, we're building based on visions, right? The visions of what could be or what we want to be. So could I just start with you guys giving just a kind of, you know, how a short recap of what is the future that you hope is being built, that you want to be living in, that uses these technologies? Arne.
I like the empathy machine thing. I mean, I love technology, I love that things are working, but I love that human sort of center of these. I mean, that's why we're meeting. It's great to meet you guys for real, not only in Facebook groups and not only in Twitter. But I think it's storytelling. I mean, that was like all the time, and that shouldn't stop. It's curation, I think, you know. You need to somehow, also in terms of licensing, you know, how can you make money? Only with the stuff that you're allowed to share, or maybe the illegal stuff, I don't know. And I think this is the first, we talked about this is the first time we don't depend on linearity. We can create something new. I mean, I don't know if we even understand. Our kids maybe do.
They do.
So they do, yeah. And they do not by brain in that sense. I think it's more a gut feeling. And I like that. I want to explore that. I want to push. Why are we looking at frames all the time? You know, seriously break the borders, break the genres. I love VR because, or AR, or mixed, or extended, or whatever, because it's interdisciplinary. Like 20 years ago, we had these things on, and it was like, neck hurts, and you couldn't see anything. And now we're talking about lenses. We're talking about, you know, like that. People are running around, Pokemon. Wow, okay. So yeah, I'm voting for really content, storytelling, curation, fun, iteration, not only on the technical side. I want to be able to really forget about old school thinking. Schubladendenken in German. I don't know, I hate it, you know. It's really open up, interdisciplinary.
So for me, the perfect world, the question you were asking is the perfect world that I would be living in, would like to live in 10 years. And that would probably be a mixture of something like Ready Player One and Snow Crash, but without the weird stuff that's also happening on the side. That would be the
without the potential destruction of the world.
Exactly. That would be very nice if that wouldn't happen. But to be honest, it's probably going to go in a little bit of that direction. So there's going to be a couple of things where people can experience things that they would never otherwise see. For example, see the top of Mount Everest, or go to the moon, or whatever these kind of things are that everyone's dreaming about. But there's also going to be societal problems associated with people spending too much time in VR. And I'm a little bit afraid of that. And I would wish for all of us to kind of counter-steer against that movement, at least a little bit.
Yeah, when you talk about Ready Player One and you reference Snow Crash, are you imagining that we'll actually have these kind of alternate societies of people who spend the majority of their lives or generate the majority of their meaning in these virtual worlds or these shared virtual spaces?
I think it's going to happen.
Yeah,
I mean, you already see that with things like Second Life or even World of Warcraft, where people just spend a ton of their time in these virtual worlds. Yeah. And it's not a bad thing per se. These people are enjoying the company of others, but there has to be a lot of education when it comes to how to present virtual reality to the mainstream.
I'll come back to it after.
It'll be interesting how to port Steiner to VR, because that might be a challenge. But I'd like to say something about our plans, very concrete plans that we have at Cologne Game Lab right now. We are part of the Technical University of Cologne, and we just kicked off an initiative to build the Center for Immersive Technologies, which will hopefully be a large-scale environment where we have motion capture technology, VR, AR technology, because we think that in the future, VR technology in R&D, in teaching, will have a major role. So our plan is really concrete, to build this environment where we invite professors, students, and companies from all kinds of different areas to experiment and prototype new products and new visions. For example, engineering is a big thing at TH Köln. If they construct engines for ocean liners, they're so big, they simply cannot have them like in the studios of the university. But of course, what we could do, we could simulate then in a large-scale collaborative VR environment. So just to have like one example where it really comes to development of concrete things using this technology, I strongly believe that this is one of the points where we need no discussion if this will happen. I mean, it already happens, but it will be a central part of university and educative work in the future.
VR is already multiple things happening at one time. If you are a burn victim at Stanford University, you're using VR to get around pain, and it's already 10 times more efficient than morphine is at curing pain. It is a new drug. And by the way, the resistance is going to play down like that. Because if you're a pastor at a conservative church and you're scared of control and some of the other things that are scary, you're going to say, my flock doesn't get to wear the glasses because it's like doing LSD, really. And it's also, at the same time, we're building a God, a new God. And if you start talking like that with religious people, they get really scared. Because Siri and Cortana and Alexa and whatever Google's building are gods. You're going to talk to them, and they're going to do a lot of interesting things, and they're going to be an all-knowing God. You're going to say, where is the best nightclub in town within walking distance of the conference center? And it's just going to show you, and it's going to show you the sensor data that's coming off the people jumping at the nightclub, right? And when I talk to my friends and other people, there's always a fear of the weird stuff. And I have an answer to that. When I got those headphones from Doppler Labs that made the Coachella music experience better because it augmented the experience, it is shocking when you put in $200 earphones and it's better than the sound system at Coachella, which is millions of dollars, huge speakers. But you take the earphones out, and reality is better too. And you put the headphones back in, and the augmented is better. How can they both be better? Well, it turns out our human mind likes analog. It likes a vinyl record for the same reason. When you talk to somebody who's really into audio, they love pulling out their vinyl records and playing it on a turntable, because the music is analog, and it's smoother, and it feels nicer. And the same thing is going to happen with these mixed reality glasses and the augmented audio. You're going to take off the glasses just to enjoy reality, because it's an analog wave coming at me, and it's very enjoyable to look at things and people and go to Yosemite and be in nature and stuff like that. But it's also really enjoyable to put them on and watch what this industry creates for our new optics system and our new augmented reality system. But it's gonna be quantized, and this is where the audiophiles pick it up. CDs are slices of numbers that you're listening to, right? The music has been quantized, it's been chunked up into little numbers. And the same thing is gonna be true in our mixed reality audio and video. It's quantized, it's digitized. And while that does bring cool new things to our world, we are going to like the analog as well and take them off once in a while. Partly because your brain is going to get tired, like it does in a sports book in Vegas, right?
But this is why I meant the emotional part, sort of, the human whatever capacity. That's not only the numbers or a translation. I mean, I was impressed by how far the NFL already goes. You know, in Germany we have this thing with the Bundesliga. Of course, they have data, and we all collect data. And I guess if there would be 100 beacons, we had lots of data. But what's the taste buds? You know, what's my personal feeling? People get sick sometimes riding a shotgun in the car. And other people enjoy the weirdest experience. And I think it's about, this is why I say, I mean, I love this whole technological development, but please do not forget the human entity. Exactly what you were saying, which is better, you know?
I really would like to pick up this, because I think, I mean, beside the whole entertainment and fun and nerdism that we all obviously have, I mean, real world demands actions at various levels from us in terms of ecological questions, political, social, etc. And I think in the future, because this technology is so immersive.
Did you just turn red because you're a Trump supporter?
But I strongly believe that we can use this technology to trigger empathy in people, to be also activists in the real world. And therefore, we will be able to have a good and healthy merge of the virtual technology and the demands of this planet, which we need to put our servers on and to dig the stuff out of the soil to produce our headsets, etc. We need to find a balance with that, but I think we can really use the power of convincing people also to act as human beings. So it's also an activist tool.
Well, I want to dig into what I think a couple of you had raised in some way, which is this idea of the resistance, right? We see the potential. We see this amazing ability to connect people. But we've got the potential for resistance coming from these changes in power relationships. We have the potential for the resistance coming from the class divide of devices on the faces, those sorts of things.
It always does. I remember when I was working in the camera store and a pile of Minolta Maxim autofocus cameras showed up. And some of the photographers I showed it to said, I will never use autofocus. They're wrong. And all through my career, I have met these people who fight the future. Kids in school told me nobody would ever use a mouse in Windows. That's for toy computing. Arrogance, but it was there, right? And I've heard that over and over. I'll never use Facebook. How many people told their kids, I'll never use Facebook? Every time Gary Vaynerchuk asks it, most of the hands go up. How many of us are now, and I hear this all the time, say, I'm never going to get in a self-driving car. Oh, really? Google's head of R&D told me that they make the self-driving car only go 25 miles an hour and be a little space bot. Because when they gave it to employees, they told employees, you will be fired if you take your attention away from the road. And there's a camera watching you, because you're an employee, you're not allowed to do anything like this. And there's sensors on the steering wheel that are feeling you, touch it, or control it. And within 3 days of giving employees a full-blown car, every single employee broke the rule, even though they were threatened of being fired and signed a paper. Because technology changes us. And when you're in one of those self-driving cars, it's so fucking boring watching the car work because it's already so good that you start looking at your phone because that's something you'd rather do than watch a machine work perfectly most of the time. And we change our behavior. We change our beliefs. Ford's CEO 4 years ago told me nobody would ever buy a self-driving car. And today, many of the people who bought the Tesla in line told me they bought it because it had the best self-driving technology. In 4 years, people's beliefs had changed. And in the next 4 years, we're going to see deeper change in belief and culture than we've seen since the 60s, when the pill brought us the sexual revolution, when the electric guitar brought us rock and roll, on and on, right?
So maybe one example, what I like to see in the future also, because we talk a lot about auditive and viewing is of course, and okay, touching in a sense and the Vive, but we have more senses. So there's this earlobe gravity thing that we have, and I haven't done myself, but now you can put on something and it actually manipulates the way you experience gravity. Smell is an issue and so on, and not only John Waters did it already, but we did one thing with the German basketball league where we inserted 8 different 360 rigs, and already there, and of course a lot of mixed media, like social media injection, live coverage, so on, somebody's calling you. And we overdid it. People were watching it, and they liked what's possible. I can be on top of the hoop, I can be, watching into the strategic planning of the teams. But if you have too much stuff going on, this is what I'm saying, the curation, you can overload it. I mean, of course, we need brands in there. We need public-private partnerships to survive, yeah? There's not the government deciding, it's us. It's companies, gods, whatever. But I think there is really the point now, and it's not a sharp line, it's a process that we have to develop together. How much can we bear as a human being?
The point you're saying about how much we can bear and the question about being overloaded, I mean, Björn, we talked about this when you were saying, you've been in the research environment for 30 years, you've seen these successive waves of hype coming through, and we all have this secret fear at night that we're going to wake up and this whole thing explodes and it's going to be 10 years until we get to the thing we were expecting in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's a possibility, but 10 years is still a short time for human beings. 10 years ago, I was watching the last space shuttle go up and taking pictures of it. 10 years is a short time.
You're absolutely right, but I think the danger right now, of course, is that we're overhyped, that the analysts and investors claim too much revenue to generate too much revenues with VR in the near future, and this.
I've never seen a product like this in my lifetime. We're underhyped. When you watch kids play with this, they don't take it off. I had to kick my son's friends out of the house at 1 in the morning. When you watch people smiling and having emotion that they've never had. I've seen CEOs crying in a refugee camp in a Samsung Gear VR. Yeah. When you see that and you say this industry is underhyped, you're nuts. This is a multi-$100 billion market coming at us in the next 5 years.
The refugee camp story that you told is one of Noni de la Peña's experiences. Yeah. She's the perfect example for the kind of immersive journalism and storytelling that you can't get in any other medium. So that's probably going to be way, way more powerful in the coming years, because you've probably seen her other experiences where it's a very basic 3D CGI environment, but the story that she's telling are just so powerful. So there's one experience about domestic violence that she put out. It's a very basic environment. You're standing in front of a trailer park, and you hear the original police audio recordings from a domestic violence incident. And that alone, just being in that situation, is so powerful. And I see a lot of stuff happening in the next 10 years in that regard, where people will be crying in headsets a lot.
Soon we're gonna. I was at dinner last night. We were standing over a parking lot. Soon we're going to come up with narrative films where out of the corner of your eye, you're going to see somebody get murdered. And you're going to expect it because you're going to load something. And the game is you have to solve the crime or get involved or make a decision not to get involved and get involved. That's part of the game. And do you get points? Does it retrain your morality? This is where the control things come in, right? Are you really in control in this world? Particularly when 1,000 people run across a field, a park to catch a Pokemon. Are we really in control in this new world where the thing is going to show us all sorts of fun stuff, right? We can argue about this at a number of different levels for a long time and then talk about each of the technologies that people are going to build and where it's going. But this year, I think we're going to get mobile VR from Google. Next year, we'll get it from Apple, which will be the important one. And they'll solve the problems. They'll close the gap between the HTC Vive and the mobile. And I think that's going to be when the market really starts to be showing up, because that's the only way we're going to sell 100 million headsets.
And talk to me about that bridging the gap. I mean, because I'm in this boat right now with a lot of people where I've cried, from VR experiences. I'm wowed when I get in them, but when I look day to day, I don't actually spend much time with the technology.
Yeah, that's changing as more of us get Vives and get the social VR, because. Believe it or not, playing tennis with somebody else over the internet is so compelling that you're going to do that a lot. And I'm noticing my time levels are going up as more of my friends get in it. So I have somebody to throw a Frisbee with. You can throw a Frisbee, you can play tennis, you can play basketball, you can play mini golf, you can play skee ball, on and on, right? You guys know who have Vives, what you can do with other people. And that's going to be where the minutes start racking up. And we're going to get some really cool ones this year, right? This social VR.
And I think it's the same as in old media. We watched films, now we watch series, so we need to have the serialization. We need to, cliffhanger the people, if it's narrative or if it's learning or whatnot. I mean, we're just doing something with a publisher for the first time that the students are experiencing biology not from a textbook, but in VR. And imagine in a couple of hours, they understand organs, just what you showed. Yeah. And the Vive example, I mean, okay, we also have a bar here down, but you can destroy the bar in 1 minute. And people do it. Before they're like this, and afterwards they smile. They've done something, but they haven't created any pain. And this is something where, of course, there's different weights to it. I mean, the morality is one thing, but the possibility is endless.
question I'd like to ask the panel, I'm taking over your role more or less here.
Take it over.
Is actually, apart from social VR, which I think we can all agree on, what do you think will be the killer app? What vertical will really drive the adoption of VR in a household?
Other than adult?
Porn, yeah.
That's social VR for me.
That's how Dominic socializes.
Sports, music, entertainment,
Yeah.
any event that you
Art.
can't
Do you
attend.
think entertainment is going to
Any event that you can't attend will be that will be a no-brainer. I
Oh
think.
yeah, well,
Live,
I mean,
everything.
of being a
that's live.
game person, of course, I strongly believe that the game industry will be probably the biggest driver right now, because
Yeah.
with PlayStation VR, I mean, this is the best entrance into the field, and we have a huge base of installed PS4 devices. There will be new devices on the market pretty soon that are even better tailored for VR. So I guess this, and I mean, looking at our students, I mean, there's a huge VR hype. We have a lot of VR projects happening all the time. So there is a strong demand, a creative demand to experiment with the technology. And therefore, for me, of course, it's the games.
I think the genres will somehow vanish. It will become more
Yeah.
multi-perspective kind of things. You just said it, film, game, whatever. I think in learning as well. If it's gamey, it's easier. You know?
I mean, technology-wise, games are a big driver for this, because I mean, all the graphic board stuff, and so I mean, this is pretty much fired by the game industry, because we need the FPS.
When it comes to mixed reality, for those who have had a HoloLens on, you know you get virtualized screens for free. So you can have 10 screens in front of you running CNN or whatever, and running your servers and watching Twitter and Facebook, and I just have to look over there, right? And we're going to have these screens all day long. I'm going to buy it just for that.
yeah. Once the resolution gets up to par and you can actually have these multiple screens, it's going to be actually one of the killer apps for me as well. I think productivity is going to be so huge, because that's going to sell a lot of HTC Vive business unit, business models or whatever.
This lets you do new ways to work together. At Meta, they showed me a coding system, because they're already coding in Meta. At Meta, they're getting rid of monitors. They're already coding inside the AR glasses, even though they're not perfect. When you're coding in their system, and you click a variable name in your code, it pops open 5 other screens that show you where the code that variable name is touching. So it lets you visualize things in new ways, in ways that you can't with a screen. And anybody who's been inside like Google's Tilt Brush, where you paint in 3D while walking around, and you can walk around the art, that's art you can't create in the physical world. I can print it out on a 3D printer, by the way, but I can't create it on a physical world. It's really magical to do this.
It reminds me exactly of when I was playing with Mac Paint when we first got a Macintosh, and I like hours and hours and hours. I was like, look what I just did on the computer.
So imagine what Photoshop is going to look like in 5 years, right? You're going to capture this room, and I'm just going to walk around and go, I want this lighter, you know, and I want this darker, and I want this blue, and whatever, and I want to grab something and put it here, right?
I think on top of it, let's not forget, it's a form of distribution. I mean, we can sort of distribute through VR, sync VR to any kind of location. You know, programmers can work together, but you can reach areas if the bandwidth.
You
is
saw
high
that
enough.
when they were passing the photo globe back and
of
forth
course.
in the Facebook video,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you can do all
No, we
sorts
have
of crazy
examples
stuff.
here also where people work in the same sort of environment, and this could be physically a different location. That's really good.
I'm afraid we are going to have to close up this panel because it is
Yeah.
time, unless Robert is going to live with his family in VR. But I'm really
In
excited.
2 years, yes, not this year.
I'm really excited about the future that you guys are helping bring into the world. I hope that it is one that is really connective. I hope that it is one that makes us hungrier for the real world, in addition to this artificial, augmented world that we're building. But I'd love to continue the debate and think about how we're going to cross this gap and bring a future we all want to live in.
I'm on Facebook, so as long as
Great.
you're not a
Oh,
Trump
yeah.
supporter and get blocked by me.
Excellent. I'm glad we closed with that. Thank you, Robert. Great. Okay, big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much.